I've been around trucking my entire life. My dad took U.S. Xpress public in 1994. I was 15 years old, and I remember wanting to learn how the stock market worked. So I learned a lot about them because it was obviously a big event in my dad's life. About 2014, I was doing some day trading on the side. I was watching CNBC, and I remember CNBC flashing the Baltic Dry Index up. And it struck me that they would always refer to global shipping as a barometer to general economic activity. And they would sort of mention freight and trucking, but never really dive into it. To an entrepreneur, when you're looking for new ideas, this seemed like it was right. As I learned more about financial markets, I thought this is a market that is massive, but there's no financial market for it. There wasn't that futures market or forward market where financial speculators and traders could use it as a barometer of freight and trade, and there was no risk management tools. So I got the idea to create a futures market based on trucking. We thought we would build an exchange, but that became obvious really quick that it was very expensive and fraught with risk. What we needed was a partner. We needed an organization that was going to have executive sponsorship of our offering of trucking, because this wasn't just launching another contract or a piece of software. This was a whole new market that had never had the opportunity to trade futures. We were meeting Nodal, and they were laying out their vision for having the exchange and the clearinghouse. And I remember sitting in this meeting. I was up in Washington, D.C., and hearing the team talk about how they would build the market, and how they would construct it, and how they would go out and execute it. And I remember thinking, these guys know what they're doing. They're really, really good and really, really smart. We should partner with them. And so we ended up doing a deal with Nodal. And I think that was a very important outcome for us. I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people in the industry. And I said, is there a benchmark index out here that tracks trucking? And it became very apparent that DAT was widely regarded as that benchmark index. Ben Murphy, who was a dear friend of mine and I had known since 2003, made the introduction to Don Thornton at DAT, and I flew out to visit Don, and I talked about this concept of creating a futures market based on trucking. It immediately resonated with Don, the idea that DAT index would be a financial barometer. He immediately got it, and he was one of the few people in freight and trucking and transportation that saw the opportunity. Ben and I always talked about the value of data and what you could do with it. This idea of markets was really intriguing to him. He was excited about doing something significant and leaving his mark on an industry that he loved so much. I think we shared that.
I first met Ben in March of 17. His humbleness really translated into a leader and somebody that knew what was going on. I knew right away when we started talking about futures, I seen it in his eyes that this was real and this was gonna work. We sat there and I just looked at him and I said, you know, I don't get this yet, I don't understand it yet, but there's something there, and this is something that's gonna change the industry as we know it. And he says, darn right, you know, absolutely. He wouldn't cuss, he just said, darn right.
Freight futures are going to play a significant role and are going to be a required way of doing business when companies see that their competitors are doing in freight futures. They're going to realize they have to be in that role in order to be doing the best practices and providing the greatest amount of value to their shareholders.
I'm so optimistic of where we're headed, where the industry's headed. Regardless of what futures do and how successful they are, the freight market is going to be more transparent. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing. And I think it extends what Ben and I talked about when we first sort of envisioned this business, was that we can help take data and inform a more transparent market.